Hello! I thought today I would just relax a bit and talk about some books I've been reading and just, have a cup of tea and some brownies. Yeah. I've read 2 books this week, which is a lot of reading for me, but also paradoxically less reading than I thought I'd do. Because I bought a few books thinking that all the time that I spend in waiting rooms or in hospital or so forth would give me time to do some reading. But as it turns out, whenever I'm in a waiting room or a hospital, I don't want to read anything. I don't really want to do anything. I just want to just do nothing. So, I did buy some books, but I haven't done as much reading as I thought I would be doing. Yeah. But this week I did read 2 books. I read Nod and I read When Breath Becomes Air. Yeah. These are very good books, I'll say that. By the way, I bought these brownies from akindmama.com and they're divine. That's why I just paused because I'm just nibbling on them a bit. But anyway, I read these 2 books. This book, When Breath Becomes Air, is about this man Paul who is a surgeon. He's really well accomplished. I'll read the startup part. The about him. Paul was a neurosurgeon and a writer. He held degrees in English literature, human biology, history and philosophy of science, and medicine. He is really well accomplished. Not only does he have all these degrees, but he also has a partner, he has a child, he's written a book, he did half marathons, he did cycling, he worked as a camp counsellor. He's done loads of things, he was a motivated and accomplished individual, actually quite inspiring. But then, when he was 36 years old, he got cancer, lung cancer, I believe. The way that Paul writes is really incredible, and I read this book in probably 2 days. Yeah, it's very well written, and I can tell that he's done a lot of reading as well because he references a lot of things, and he talks about how he's been reading a lot since he was 10. I really like how he speaks about his wife as well. There's a passage quite close to the start. I'll read it. Lucy, whom I met in the first year of medical school, understood the subtext of the academics. Her capacity to love was barely finite, another lesson to me. One night on the sofa in my apartment, while studying the reams of wavy lines that make up EKGs, she puzzled over and then correctly identified a fatal arrhythmia. All at once it dawned on her, and she began to cry. Wherever this practice EKG had come from, the patient had not survived. The squiggly lines on that page were more than just lines. They were ventricular fibrillation deteriorating, and they could bring you to tears. These people, they're not just doing jobs. They have passion, and it's pretty incredible, everything that they've been through. And I know I keep saying he's well accomplished and so forth, but I feel like he would almost find it offensive that I'm calling him accomplished, because on page 120 he says his brother said he had accomplished so much and he said he meant well, but the words rang hollow. My life had been building potential that would now go unrealised. So then I was like, whoa, you might find it a bit weird that I keep thinking of him as so accomplished and inspirational, and but then again, I feel like his life has reached potential now, because he might not be a great surgeon at this point, curing some disease or anything, but he has produced this book which is now available to buy in a completely different country in a supermarket. And it's pretty sad actually that he'll never know that. Because in 2015, aged 37, he died. So he'll never know that his book is available in a different country just by picking it off a shelf, not by like buying it online or something, by just picking it up. He'll never know that, but yeah. Anyway, I think this book is very good. It's very good. I also read the book Nod, and when I bought this book, I wasn't thinking about cancer at all. I was just getting some books to read, and this one, it says in the about the author that the author was born in Blackpool, England, and moved to Vancouver, Canada. And this book is set in Vancouver, and I spent 7 months in close to Vancouver last year, and I'm from England, so and I'm in England right now. So I thought, wow, that'd be a interesting book to read. You know, I'm I'm from those places. That could be a good break, a nice little relaxing read. Anyway, this book is about basically almost everyone on the planet losing the ability to sleep. There's only like a handful of people who have maintained the ability to sleep. Everyone else can't sleep at all, and so the world is sort of disintegrating around the main character because of this, because everyone else is going out their minds with the inability to sleep, whereas, you know, he's sort of just trapped there with unable to help them, and having to go through it. It is a very well written book, and there are some passages which I found pretty relatable in some ways, and then I was about 120 pages in-ish, and then I thought, you know what, this is a really good book. I'm going to look up the author and see what else they've done, if anything, or I'm going to read the author's note in the back, and I'm going to see what else there is. I think this is the only book that he's read, but in the author's notes, I basically, to paraphrase, found out that this whole book is a sort of metaphor for his cancer. Yeah, so he's got this essay about how his cancer is stranger than fiction. So there we go, that's how I accidentally took a break and read another book about cancer. Yeah, but his cancer, this whole situation went far beyond what I think my situation will be like. And so, you know, for the first half of the book, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how that relates to cancer. Oh, I can relate to this situation. And then it sort of went off in a direction where I was like, why are you going over there for? Stop it. No. So, for the first half of the book, I was thinking, oh yeah, I can see that. I can see how that's. Yeah, I can see how that would relate. And then I was thinking about giving this book to, you know, family members or something. You know, I thought it might be helpful for them too. But then it went off on a different angle, and I thought, no way. It's interesting actually. Both of these books, the authors aren't around anymore, and their cancers were a lot more, I could say, a lot more progressed than mine, and so forth. But I sort of feel a bit more of a kinship with the way that Paul writes, even though he was directly talking about that he knew he was going to be dying of this cancer. Unfortunately. So you'd think I would find them both to be quite morbid and bring me down, but it's just that Paul writes in such an optimistic, hopeful way, regardless, that it's just so inspiring. You know, he knew he had this cancer, and he's a doctor. He knew what was happening, but he still went on to do more things. You know, in his last 1 or 2 years of life, even with that diagnosis hanging over him, he still accomplished more, he still did more, and he still planned for a future, because he still knew that his wife and his child would be in that future. So he still planned for it, you know, he still planned for there to have to be stuff. Yeah. I find this one more helpful. Even his life wasn't perfect. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying that his relationships were perfect or anything. I mean, right at the start of the book, he has a problem in his relationship in which his wife is feeling really isolated because he's doing his residency, you know, 12, 14 hours a day or so forth. And she feels like he's hiding something from her, which he is. He's hiding that he thinks he has cancer. So I'm not saying everything was perfect. But in the face of things being not perfect, he's just very brave and still very hopeful, and still he still goes on. Yeah. And so these books are very contrasting, you know, in the face of disaster. Paul's book, all of his family are coming together. He's striving on. He writes a whole entire book. Whereas in the face of apocalypse in Nod, everything's crumbling to the ground. It's a true disaster. But what I find unusual is that in the author's note of Nod, he thinks he's created a hopeful book. He describes it as a hopeful ending. And I thought, I don't know. That's up for debate to me. I don't class Nod as hopeful personally, but apparently the author does. Yeah, that's my opinions on these two books, and I'm just gonna, I don't know, continue to have my tea and brownies and maybe read another book. I don't know. Have a nice day.